estimated 6 million people are still without power in Ukraine on Friday after a targeted attack by Russian forces on the country's infrastructure, according to Kyiv. EU ministers welcome a plan to coordinate the bloc's response to migrant arrivals, following a dispute between France and Italy over aid ships. Darkness on the streets of Lviv, as around 6 million people in Ukraine are still without power, as the situation is still desperate after a targeted attack by Russian forces on the country's infrastructure, according to Kyiv. Today, there is not a single thermal and hydropower plant in Ukraine that has not been fired upon by the enemy, and the largest nuclear plant in Europe, Zaporizhzhia MPP, remains occupied. Despite this, today our energy system has emerged from a severe system accident. Currently, electricity producers provide 70% coverage of consumption needs. Workers across the country are working tirelessly to get the rest of Ukraine's lights and heat turned back on. Around 50% of Ukraine's energy facilities have been damaged, in what France's foreign minister described as Moscow's attempt to weaponize winter. The European Union's interior ministers have welcomed a plan to better coordinate the bloc's response to migrant arrivals. This comes after several hundred people trying to enter the EU were stranded at sea aboard aid ships while countries argued about where they should be allowed to disembark.
We will now relaunch, as a result of this discussion, the European Contact Group on Search and Rescue to improve the overall EU coordination. 1,300 migrants died or went missing in the central Mediterranean this year alone, and this cannot be an acceptable hypothesis.
On Thursday, protesters gathered in France to remember 27 migrants who died while trying to cross the English Channel last year. Earlier this month, London and Paris signed a deal that would increase police patrols on beaches in northern France to try to stop people from crossing into the UK. Marches and rallies around the world have marked the UN's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. In Istanbul, police broke up a rally after demonstrators gathered despite a ban on the protests because of security and public order concerns. Dozens of people were reportedly arrested. Thousands more marched through the streets of Madrid and Barcelona, denouncing the oppression of women in the country. In Spain, over 1,000 women have been killed by their partner or ex-partner since 2003. In Mexico City, protesters condemned gender violence and femicide. During COVID-19 lockdowns, the number of women in Mexico seeking help at shelters for victims of violence jumped by 80%. A 16-year-old boy attacked 2 schools in the Brazilian city of Aracruz on Friday, shooting indiscriminately and killing 2 teachers and a primary school student. 11 more were injured, 4 of whom were hospitalized, including a little girl. The attacker, a former student of one of the educational centers, was arrested hours after the attack and confessed to the crime, which he said he had planned for 2 years. The ballot box has closed in Taiwan as the country has voted for its local election and whether or not to lower the voting age from 20 to 18. But this election has cast a large shadow, as the country's president has framed it as a way to send a message to the international community that Taiwan is determined to defend its democracy against China. Though many local experts question if Beijing had a large role to play in this election, as there were few mentions of China's large-scale military exercises during its lead-up.
International authorities have taken a historic decision to extend protection to 54 species of shark from global trade. The agreement, made at the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, aims to curb the trafficking of shark fins, which are popular in Asia for making soups. Studies say the number of threatened shark species has more than doubled in the last decade.